Amnesty International has accused the State of Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians in the Gaza war. The London-based human rights group said in a report published on Thursday that it had found evidence of genocidal intent on Israel's part, after reviewing months of incidents and more than 100 statements from Israeli officials. It was Amnesty's first such ruling during an active armed conflict. Israel's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Oren Marmorstein wrote on X that the report was fabricated, entirely false and based on lies. Genocide is defined by the 1948 Genocide Convention enacted in the wake of the Nazi Holocaust as, quote, acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial or religious group.
First, that if there have been acts that may be characterized as genocidal, then they have been perpetrated against Israel.
Israel's lawyers already countered accusations of genocide brought by South Africa in January. Israel says it respects international law and has a right to defend itself against Palestinian militant group Hamas, whose cross-border attack on October 7, 2023, precipitated the Gaza war. Hamas killed more than 1,200 people in Israel and took more than 250 hostages back to Gaza, according to Israeli tallies. Gaza's health ministry says Israel's military campaign since then has killed more than 44,400 Palestinians and injured many others. Gazans welcomed the Amnesty report. Iyad Abu Mustafa, at a funeral in Khan Yunis for the victims of an Israeli strike, said the international community must hold the country to account. Palestinian and UN officials say there are no safe areas left in Gaza, a tiny, densely populated and heavily built-up coastal territory. Most of Gaza's 2.3 million people have been internally displaced, some as many as 10 times. Global food security experts have also warned of famine in parts of northern Gaza, a warning that Israel rejects. Amnesty International Secretary-General Agnes Callamard told journalists in The Hague its conclusion had not been made lightly, politically or preferentially. There is a genocide being committed, she said. There is no doubt. Amnesty said Israel and its military had committed killings and caused serious harm, and had deliberately inflicted conditions of life that were calculated to bring about a protected group's physical destruction. It urged the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court to investigate the alleged genocide.
It is falsely accusing me, the democratically elected Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
In November, the ICC issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his ex-defense minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity against Palestinians in Gaza. They both deny those charges.
After being ousted by a no-confidence vote, French Prime Minister Michel Barnier officially resigned on Thursday. But he and his government were asked to stay on in a caretaker role by President Emmanuel Macron. A statement by the Elysée said they would remain while a new Prime Minister is nominated. Macron addressed the nation later on Thursday.
We can't allow ourselves to be divided or to do nothing. That's why I'll name a Prime Minister in the coming days. I will ask them to form a government in the general interest, representing all the political parties who can participate in it, or at least who agree not to bring it down.
After a barely 3-month reign, far-right and leftist lawmakers toppled his government in a no-confidence vote, making the former European Union's Brexit negotiator the shortest-serving Prime Minister in modern French history. The vote was triggered by Barnier's attempts to push an unpopular budget through an unruly hung parliament without a vote. It caps off weeks of tension, with far-right national rallies Marine Le Pen describing the budget as too harsh on working people. Barnier's resignation further weakens the position of President Emmanuel Macron, who started the ongoing crisis with an ill-fated decision to call a snap election in June. Macron himself faces growing calls to resign, but he has a mandate until 2027 and cannot be pushed out.
The mandate you democratically gave me is a 5-year mandate, and I will carry it out fully until the end.
For now, France risks ending the year without a stable government or a 2025 budget, although the constitution allows special measures that would avert a US-style government shutdown. Macron was meeting allies and senior politicians on Thursday as he sought to swiftly appoint a new prime minister. Sources told Reuters that he wanted someone in place by a ceremony on Saturday to reopen the Notre Dame Cathedral, which US President-elect Donald Trump is due to attend. The new Prime Minister will face the same challenges as Barnier in the divided Parliament. There can be no new parliamentary election before July.
Choc d'espérance qu'attend la France.
French bonds and stocks rallied on Thursday on what some traders said was profit-taking following the widely expected outcome of the no-confidence vote. But the relief rally is unlikely to last, given the scale of political uncertainty.
Syrian rebels released this footage on Thursday, purporting to show a captured government military site near the city of Hama. Reuters was able to verify the location, but not the date. Rebels said they'd ousted the Syrian military from Hama, their latest victory in a lightning advance across the country's north. The Syrian army said it had redeployed outside the city in what it called an effort to, quote, preserve civilians' lives and prevent urban combat. It's a significant blow to President Bashar Assad. The capture of Hama comes days after rebels took the main northern city of Aleppo and have since pushed south from their enclave in northwest Syria. One of the key rebel commanders goes by the nom de guerre Abu Muhammad al-Golani. This week, Golani visited Aleppo's historic citadel in a moment of symbolic victory. Rebels were driven from the city after a brutal siege in 2016. Golani had previously led the Syrian branch of the al-Qaeda Islamist group, but now calls his militia Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS. The group has been designated a terrorist outfit by Turkey, the United States, Russia, and other countries. Golani's rebranding appears aimed to de-emphasize the hard-line Sunni element of his past in the fight for a country made up of different religious and ethnic minorities. Golani has pledged to protect Syria's religious minorities and has called on them to abandon Assad. But many remain fearful of the insurgents. Shafiqa Saida and her husband Mohammed Nasro are part of Syria's Yazidi minority who fled Aleppo as the rebels approached. They are living in tents outside the city of Tabqa, desperate for food. Saida said she implored her husband to flee.
They said that the Free Syrian Army would enter the area. We were afraid because there were women with us. We were afraid that they would kidnap them from us. My husband said we will stay in the area and not go out. So my eyes teared up and I cried. I told him, how will you leave me with these women here? But I convinced him.
Rebels in Hama said they were preparing to keep marching south toward Homs, Syria's great crossroads city that links the capital, Damascus, to the north and coast.
In the first few hours after the 27th of November, we saw that the number went up from 48,000 to almost 280,000 people who got displaced so far. And if the situation continues evolving in that pace, we're expecting collectively around 1.5 million people that will be displaced and will be requiring our support. It's at a breaking point at the moment in Syria. After 13 or 14 years of conflict, over 3 million Syrians are severely food insecure and cannot afford enough food, and malnutrition is at global levels, emergency levels. A total of 12.9 million people in Syria were classified as food insecure and needed food assistance before the recent crisis. So that's why it's another call for support, for funding to all the organizations and humanitarians working across.
Essentials like bread were in short supply in Aleppo in the days after Islamist rebels took control of the northwestern Syrian city from government forces. Reuters visited Aleppo Wednesday and spoke to locals lining up for food and fuel. While a week on, some services are back, including some set up by the rebels. Ahmed Hamdan said some people were not able to get bread at all.
In terms of the bread situation, this is a very, very big crisis. People in their hundreds are at the bakeries. Some people can get bread, and others not at this time. The bread situation, some good people gave us bread. Getting bread has become a struggle.
The insurgents, led by the group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, are trying to show Syrians and the West that they are a viable alternative to President Bashar al-Assad. They've set up several services like traffic control and lifted a curfew. However, gas remains in short supply. One motorist complained prices were too high. It's profiting those in power, he says. HTS is still seen as a terror group by Turkey and the West, even though it cut ties with Al-Qaeda and rebranded itself as a more moderate group. A decade ago, Aleppo was a major battle site between al-Assad's government and rebel forces, a bloody civil war that had no formal end, and which killed hundreds of thousands of Syrians and displaced millions. But in the past week, the insurgents led by HTS staged a whirlwind advance in the north of the country. They captured Aleppo last week and Hama this Thursday, which lies more than a third of the way between Aleppo and Damascus, Syria's capital in the south. The onslaught is President al-Assad's biggest challenge in years, and a devastating blow to him and his Russian and Iranian allies.
South African authorities say they have retrieved 6 bodies of illegal miners in the past 24 hours from a disused mine shaft. Hundreds are still believed to be trapped underground. Police have been trying to empty the tunnel for weeks but are locked in a standoff with the miners, all part of a crackdown on illegal mining. Officials have used this shaft, which descends vertically for more than a mile, to send food and other items down to the miners. South Africa's Police Commissioner Fanny Masemola visited the site on Thursday.
We're aware that in the last 24 hours, 6 bodies has been retrieved in Stelfontein. And of course, loss of life is regretted. But also we take note that the conditions of this shaft is also quite dangerous.
Illicit mining has plagued South Africa for decades through small-time pilfering and organized criminal networks. The recent crackdown has seen more than 100 illegal miners resurface in the last few weeks. Police had initially cut off food and water supplies to force them to the surface and arrest them for illegally entering the abandoned mine in Stilfontein in search of leftover gold. However, a recent court ruling mandated that the miners be provided with sustenance. The closure of gold mines in several South African provinces has attracted thousands of undocumented migrants from neighboring countries who have arrived to reopen closed and disused mines. Authorities have grappled with balancing rescue efforts and law enforcement. South Africa's president had previously called Stilfontein a crime scene.